Hello and welcome back to another episode of Mystery Red Reads. I am your host, Mystery Red, and this is my disclaimer. This beta read in concrete is at the author's request. This video is for learning purposes. Today we're looking at a piece of original fiction. We are back with No Ant 5039, looking at Nothing Left to Save, and we are on chapter 4. I have a playlist for all of my repeat authors. You can go in there and look for No Ant 5039, and you can listen along to Nothing Left to Save from chapter 1. I've also read a memoir for No Ant 5039, and the chapters that they shared publicly are also available there for you to listen to. So with that, really quick, if you're new here, welcome. If you haven't yet, please do like and subscribe, and feel free to comment on my reads. And if you're interested in having a read done for you, I'm happy to do that either publicly or privately. First chapters are free. So on that note, I'm going to set my little 30-minute timer here, and we're going to dive in. All right. Let's see. I paused there to grab a drink, and now I'm back. Okay, so 30 minutes, here we go. Let's see, so I highlighted my spot where I left off. Let's take that off, and let's go up here and just make sure we're in suggesting mode, because, I was in editing, and I don't want to make any actual changes that you can't see or track. All right. Chapter 4. As John rises and slips into his shorts, Kate lies in the center of the bed. Behind him, against the wall, stands a brick red china cabinet. If this were someone's home, picture frames, keepsakes, maybe a stack of unopened mail would clutter it. But the antique hutch stands bare, stripped of sentiment, an empty witness to their fragile reconciliation. The only adornment, the plate of she abandoned, feels out of place now, an artifact of desperation rather than decadence. Heat prickles her cheeks again. The phantom embarrassment isn't from what she did to lead him to the bedroom 30 minutes ago, but from how much she had built up in her head beforehand. I'm pausing because I'm kind of relating as a reader to this little opening where you are in a vacation home and it's bare. It's got the essentials and it's got a couple of decorations, but they're not personal. And honestly, I like that, and I find it very relaxing. I think it's the lack of clutter, because I'm still at that chaos stage of life. So my house is filled with like tons of things that belong to all the people that live here. And at the same time, if those things weren't here, I'd probably be sad. So it's like some days you just want to pull your hair out because you have to dust and rearrange and find a spot for everything. And everyone's things are threatening to overtake the space. But at the same time, it's all of those things that show the character of the people that live there. So, but I love this opening. All right, let's see. All right, so she's kind of built this. She's got a phantom embarrassment, isn't from what she did to lead him to the room, but from how much she had built this up in her head. Ooh, that sounds like it might not have been everything she was hoping for. Or maybe everything it once upon a time was. Okay. Her husband, a man she'd spent a decade with, yet barely knew, a quiet topography she had wandered but never mapped. Unsaid things hung heavy between them, like pollen on still air. Of course, they talked, but never about the things that mattered. He'd say something, and she'd hear something else. Not because he lied, but because she filled in the gaps, told herself stories about what he meant, and believed them. Kate could feel it happening, ripples spreading from their silence, the way water curls and spins when disturbed. Each assumption barreled forward, crashing into their hearts until the weight threatened to drown them both. John opens the sliding door to the patio. Outside, the world between the cabin and the ocean is quiet and still. But inside, the noise persists. The relief of their intimacy is unexpected, more a surrender than a victory. But the freedom is the same. Now I'm going to pause. So we do have two buts, and we talked about this in the last video, but at the same time, I actually have a little bit of a suggestion that is just a simple fix for this while still keeping to your cadence. And let's just see if it works. Outside, the world between the cabin and the ocean is quiet and still, but inside, the noise persists. The relief of their intimacy is unexpected, more a surrender than a victory, yet the freedom is the same. or still the freedom is the same. Also, I'm noticing on this sentence up here, you could probably just omit this. So let's try that out. Outside, the world between the cabin and the ocean is quiet and still. Inside, the noise persists. The relief of their intimacy is unexpected, more a surrender than a victory. Still, the freedom is the same. So you have lots of options with this sentence right here, and you can completely omit this, and I think it read beautifully without it. Let's keep going. In the days leading up to this, she had pictured as a kind of reset button, the one thing that could cut through the tangle of tension and distance orbiting them. Kate carried the thought with her, turning it over in her mind, wrapping it in hope and worry until it grew into something far heavier than it should. Now that it's done, she feels light again. Nothing magic, nothing revelatory, but the deed was done. With the pressure behind her, there was room for something else, for the play, the freedom, the possibility of more. She pulls the duvet over herself, then lets it fall, too restless to stay still. It's of course, the jittery pulse of it still coursing through her veins. Hyper-aware, she steps back into her dress, her thoughts skipping ahead of themselves, tangled and unfinished. After a long pause, she says, "We should have packed smokes." The words fall out, unformed but inevitable, as if they'd been circling somewhere in the gap between thought and speech, waiting for the right moment to land. John, as usual, doesn't miss a beat. "Figured you'd say that." For a moment, the air between them isn't thick with expectations or too many unsaid things. "Yeah, there's just something about a cigarette, and you really can't have one without the other." "I sort of figured you'd say that too." The corners of his mouth curl upwards. "Did you check the inside pocket of my jacket?" Okay, I'm going to pause. I'm loving this. I'm loving this little interaction between them. It's very affectionate, and it's very showing that he knows her well. Okay? I have the feeling he knows her better than she's giving him credit for, to be honest. I really think he does. She feels he's a stranger to her, but at the same time, is this like the odd situation where he knows her better than she knows him? I mean, maybe she knows him better than she thinks she does. I'm not really sure. It's like she has this yearning inside her for more of something, but I'm not entirely sure she knows exactly what that is. She has ideas. She may have even blamed him for this void inside her. But is it really him? I'm wondering all of these things, okay? These are my reader responses. This is not judgment at all. This is me puzzling this out. What is this? What is this thing that she is missing? And she's kind of so far in what I've read, he's kind of the scapegoat for it, but I'm not really sure that it's entirely him. He may feel some void there, or he may be satisfied. I find that sometimes we as women want that romance, I guess, that not necessarily the corny fairy tale, but the same sensation that comes with it. Does that make sense? And men are not, I'm not saying all of them. Some of them are very romantic. Some of them are very heavy in the emotions. I've met a couple that are very fairy tale, okay? They want to give a woman the fairy tale. But I think the average guy, and I don't mean to make that sound bad, but I meant maybe most guys. So I'm not at all saying this is a bad thing, because I have actually learned to appreciate the small everyday things. Because my husband is not a glamorous romantic dude, okay? But he's a wonderful human being who I absolutely adore, and people love him. He's got this amazing charisma that he's very, very likable, okay? And he does small kindnesses constantly, and they're very small things that someone could take for granted if you weren't looking for what to appreciate. And so I quit pining for that fairy tale romance thing, all right? I kind of had to let that go. It's not a realistic expectation for him, okay? So I kind of am pondering in the back of my mind as a reader, what is this thing that she is yearning for? Is there actually a problem? Is there actually a conflict? Do we have, and maybe that's the journey of this story, is coming to realize that we have to, I don't know, because we're only on chapter 4, but I'm wondering, I'm wondering long term where we're going with this, what's going to happen. I feel like the relationship is at stake here. I feel like he's kind of at this point, he kind of feels like the scapegoat for what's missing, the void inside her. Not that he's done anything to deserve it, that I've seen so far. Okay, so he could be clueless. He may not even realize anything's wrong in her mind, because I have definitely thrown a temper tantrum and had my husband be like, "Girl, I didn't even know there was a problem," and I'm like, "What? How could you not know?" And he's like, "Yeah, I thought everything was fine. I don't know. I have no idea where you're coming from." You know, it's real that has happened a lot, and less so now, because I've come to observe and ask myself, question myself before I act. You know, for the most part, I'm able to check myself before, be like, okay, is this really something? You know, what am I really upset about? And get to the bottom of that. And that takes some self-reflection before I go calling on anyone else and lashing out everywhere. Sometimes that involves me frantically sweeping as my mind sorts through whatever it is I'm stressed about. But anyway, so those are all reader thoughts of just, I'm kind of wondering in the back of my mind, what is it? What is the source? What is maybe he did something. Was there hints that he had done something in the first 3 chapters that I can't remember? I don't think there was. I think I was still kind of having this general wondering of what could be wrong. What is this space between them? What is it? What's in there or what isn't there, maybe, you know. But yeah, so I have read for other people, so that I remember my characters and remember where we're going, but I'm not reading straight through. So if I forget a detail, but I don't think I've forgotten this one. I don't think. I could very well be wrong. We're gonna keep going. All right. What? Remember the last station we stopped at? He asks, moving toward his jacket draped over the suitcase. Okay, could we use jacket and coat interchangeably to clear up an echo? I'm just going to point it out. We're going to move on. I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to highlight it and we're going to keep going. All right. Remember that last station we stopped at? He asks, moving toward his jacket draped over the suitcase. John unzips the inner pocket, pulling out a pack of Camels and a blue Bic lighter. I grabbed these while you were in the restroom. That's so thoughtful. I'm not at all encouraging smoking. Of course you did. I'm speechless. She's not, though. Her mind races through 1,000 things she might say. What are those things, I'm wondering, as a reader? What are one of those 1,000 things? Maybe 1 or 2 of them. If she shared 1 or 2 of those 1,000 things she might say, it might give me a place. Like, is it with an attitude? Is it with sass? Is it with affection? Is it with pleasant surprise? I'm just kind of wondering. You might have an opportunity here to tuck 1 or 2 of those thoughts right at the end of this sentence. And I'm just going to say musing in video. Doesn't have to be long, just 1 or 2 of those little thoughts that kind of would give where her heart is in her reaction to this. Okay, so she's not speechless. All right, you want to split one or have your own? He asks, rhythmically slamming the pack into his palm. All right, so you've got him asking twice in a row as your dialogue tag. I don't even know. You could probably say, I kind of like this one. You could probably omit this one and switch this to moves. Let's try it. Remember that last station we stopped at? He moves toward his jacket draped over the suitcase. John unzips the inner pocket, pulling out a pack of Camels and a blue Bic lighter. I think that would work. My musings are kind of out of order, so the notes might not make sense. What do I want to do about that? How do I want to indicate that for you? I think you'll be fine. Let's see. Remember that last station we stopped at? He moves toward his jacket. I'm going to highlight it and just kind of like, he moves toward his jacket. There we go. And we're going to skip on back down here, and it'll all make sense. It'll look out of order when you're reviewing to edit, but then it'll make sense if you've listened to my rambling. All right. So, we've got to do this whole thing right. I want my own. But first, she says, bump. She jabs his credit card up and down against the plate, then scrapes the powder in his direction and this direction and that direction, shaping it into small white promises. Let me see a smoke. John hands her a Camel and kisses her. The gesture lands like a ribbon on wreckage, tender, but as absurd as the iron cross in the kitchen drawer. Oh, but I like it. I thought it was kind of like passionate. He's kind of like going for it. He's into this. I'm kind of thinking she might not be as into this as he is. Or maybe he's just trying, but is he trying too hard? Oh, all the questions. All right. She presses Oh, I can read some of this and just skip over parts of it, I guess. She presses the cigarette between her lips, then pulls it away, tilting the filter into the powder and rolling it. I guess you can keep carefully, but I don't think you need it. It is an adverb. I'm mid in that one. The bleep clings to the moisture her lips left behind, forming a fine, uneven coat. Kate passes it to John and prepares another the same way, handing it off as well. She slides her arms into the sleeves of her faded, oversized zip-up sweatshirt, the fabric soft from years of washing. Then she adds thick socks to her look. Glass in hand, she joins John in front of the china buffet. Round 2, she says, picking up the 20. Her tone is light, but beneath it is the awareness that they've passed the point of return. There's always a shift between the first and second lines. The initial high is clean, almost sacred, like a poppy blooming in a church garden just in time for Easter Sunday. But every bump that follows is a little less pristine, a little more desperate, each chasing a sincerity that's already slipping away. Slipped away. Yeah. She raises her eyes to her reflection in the oval mirror above the china cabinet, pupils wide, consuming, like the sweatshirt over her dress, like the powder on the plate of the otherwise barren furniture. How did they end up here? Communicating through a therapist, relying on their kids for conversation, tiptoeing around each other's moods, and on some disillusioned drug bender. Never would she have guessed. Interesting, okay? So she's like, how did we get here to where this is all that it's like very fragile. It just feels, all right, so I'm getting the sensation that this is all very fragile. They're going through the motions. It's a kind of effort, but really it's held together with the glue of what they're doing. And you can see that what they've already been doing, which is communicating through a therapist or having someone help translate for each other their feelings and their thoughts and their needs and their wants. And they're relying on their kids for conversation. Now, feeling like you rely on your kids for conversation, I think it just naturally becomes, when that is your all-consuming world, that it naturally becomes the subject of your conversation when you're out. I spend a lot of time in the room with my husband being very quiet, I don't know what to talk about if it's not our children. But that doesn't mean that would be forever, because the more time that we're spending apart from them, the more we're doing things on our own, and maybe we bring up each other's interests. Like I have hobbies and he has hobbies, and maybe I'll ask about that, or maybe we try one of those hobbies together. And I think it's like when the children grow up and move away, we have to get to know each other again, and maybe that can be fun too. All right, let's see. I do find the more time we spend together that I'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember. I like you so much. I miss this because we've made the children the center of our world. We're taking care of them, and that's very all-consuming. It really is. And then we kind of forget who we are when we're putting these other people before us. But these people need us. It's challenging. It's truly challenging and very relatable. Tiptoeing around each other's moods and on some disillusioned bender. Never would she have guessed. Okay, so we're getting ready to lead into the second part of this chapter. What did we say? We're on chapter 4, correct? I believe we are. All right, here we go. Sandwiched between Michelle and Andrea, Kate reached across the table for a sticky note and pen. Category, famous females. A game to pass the time before the night tipped into chaos. With Michelle's wedding just 2 weeks away, their campout celebration along the river offered an excuse to wear flower crowns and shiny Mardi Gras beads, drinking to their friendship and the future. That was a long line, but it worked, so we're going to keep going. Yeah, it was long. All right. Kate's eyes caught on a tassel of wavy hair, hints of red glinting in the sunlight, and a pair of smiling eyes. As he approached, her focus shifted to his name tag, John. Carefully, he set the tray of drinks down, handing them out one by one. Then his gaze lifted. For a moment, it locked with hers. Heat rushed to her cheeks, so intense she was sure he'd notice. She glanced away, but not before catching the flicker of amusement in his expression. Here's your drinks. I'm going to be back out with the appetizers in just a moment. Despite the inviting weather, the campsite and its adjoining cabins had few occupants. 2 patrons sat inside at the bar, and 2 families had tables leaving the outside deck for their private charades. The familiar tune of Jim Croce's Bad Bad Leroy Brown spilled onto the patio, mixing with their laughter and the rustle of sycamores. Kate scrawled Cleopatra on the yellow post-it, adding it upside down to the pile and for the ritual to continue. Natalie shuffled the notes, and after a head-shaking shot, each of them pressed their sticky badges on their foreheads. With a teasing edge, Kate asked, "Am I known for a contribution to history?" Looking for clues, she studied the creases in her friend's cheeks. "Sort of. Probably not in the way you're thinking," Natalie said with a slur. I think he'll probably give up the slight and just go with slur. It's up to you. Personal opinion. Not really. Michelle's fingers rubbed the beaded necklaces together. But we'll say no. Was I the first at something? A chorus of no's echoed back, a synchronized harmony. Each question harder to come up with than the last, every answer less definitive. Kate's mind was just shy of sharp enough. With a smack, the flap of the swinging door announced John's return, balancing colorful baskets of shoestring fries, onion rings, calamari, and nachos. 2 guesses left. That was all she had. Searching for inspiration, she lifted her head, eyes meeting John's. Time hung just long enough for her to point. Before speaking, Kate swallowed hard. "You," she said, finger out in front of her. "Yeah, you." Trey balanced on one hand. He paused. "What's going on here, ladies?" His brow arched as he added, "Because I've only served you 2 rounds." With his eyes fixed on Kate, John said, "So you're either a lightweight or very charming, and I'm guessing it's the latter." Kate tilted her head, still smiling as if the whole thing was some elaborate joke. "Actually, I seem to be having an identity crisis," she said, gesturing at the card pressed to her forehead. "Do you know me?" John tilted his head. "Oh, okay. We're going to echo on head. It's breaking your rhythm. Do. Oh, I know why now. Okay, when we scroll back, we have head, forehead, and head again. It's a lot of heads. So I would toy with that a little bit." John tilted his head, his grin teasing. "Is this a trick?" His eyes flickered from her gaze to her strawberry blonde hair, then to the absurd sticky note. "Because it feels like I'm walking into a trap." Leaning closer, he squinted to read the name scrawled beneath the crooked crown. A slow grin spread across his face. "You got a fast car," he crooned, off-key but earnest. "I got a plan to get us out of here." She shot to her feet, her smile almost as big as her face. "Oh my gosh, who thought up Tracy Chapman? It's Tracy Chapman, right?" she demanded, pointing at John again. "How was I supposed to guess that?" Kate didn't wait for an answer. Determined, she rounded the table towards John. "I've heard a lot of covers of fast cars," she said, letting the words stretch as she stood in front of him. "Not bad." She tugged at one of the beaded necklaces, pulling it free from the others. "A token of my appreciation," she said, holding it out. John glanced at the necklace before accepting the shiny blue strand. "Remind me, what were you drinking?" Kate scanned their table. A crumpled post-it, empty shot glasses, and sweating tumblers fought for space among the fried appetizers. She gestured vaguely, half laughing. "Honestly, I have no idea anymore." "In that case, can I buy you a drink? My shift will be over here in 10 minutes. "Only if you share one of those spirits, too." She gestured toward the blue pack of cigarettes, poking up from his front pocket. All right, so we have an echo on poking and pocket. Poking, pocket. Okay, let's just highlight it for the sake of pointing out the source of my stumble and try it again. "Only if you share one of those spirits, too." She gestured toward the blue pack of cigarettes, I think poking up from his front pocket. Okay, we got pack, poke, pocket. All right, so those 3 caused me to stumble. However, I think if reading silently, it would have been just fine. I'm going to point that out. John wasn't much taller than Kate. Blonde locks with a hint of ginger, his hair curled around an unruly cowlick with a slight pout, his upper lip with like white linens and too many pillows. Breathy kisses, desires in the dark. There was something about his features she couldn't shake, like an open stretch of country road or a song she didn't want to end. The navy Henley sleeves rolled up fit him just right. The way he looked at her, behind those smiling, stormy blue eyes, was disarming. Their sparkle, a heart language that promised nothing, was more important than what she said, nothing more captivating than the laugh she hadn't quite meant to let slip. At least that's how she read it in those sparkling eyes. "How about a whiskey, Ginger?" he offered. "Okay. Whiskey, Ginger." Is he calling her a ginger? Because I think he is. They both seem to have some red in their hair. Lord. Sounds like my husband's dropping things upstairs. Okay. If he is calling her a ginger, I think we need a comma here. But I'm not entirely sure. I mean, I'm not aware of a whiskey ginger unless, you know, it's like bourbon or amaretto, and I call it something different. So I don't think I don't think he's referring to the drink. I think he's calling her a ginger. Not sure, not sure. I'm just going to take that out and say musings in video because I'm not certain. It could be perfectly fine if it's not something I'm getting the context of. All right, and we'll keep going. Do you think I could have a cherry in it? Sure thing, like a spiked Shirley Temple. Turning to her friends, John said, oh, does that like it's like a whiskey and ginger ale? Is that what it is? I don't know. Anyway. Sure thing, like a spiked Shirley Temple. Turning to her friends, John said, another round of shots on the house to help celebrate the bride-to-be over here. Once again, in harmony, the girls yelled, shots! When the drinks came, Kate's gaze moved from her friends to John's. Without breaking contact, she tilted her glass toward him in mock toast. To identity crises, she said. Her drink hissed and popped among the cubes of ice. They caught the faint yellow glow of the string lights overhead, and she wondered if it was the twinkle or the liquor making the night feel this loose. John's glass hovered near his mouth. And bad covers a fast car. His tone was quiet, matter of fact. He sipped slow and deliberate in a way that made her question if she looked sloppy. No, he's just sober and you're not, hun. The world behind her, Michelle shouting, the beads swinging as the girls buzzed around in excitement, blurred like the horizon melting into fog. Kate had said yes, of course, to the whiskey, to the cigarette, to the story that had unfolded, just as she had agreed to earlier that afternoon. She had said yes to John years ago. With all his boyish charm, it had been as natural as a ball dropping to the ground, helpless against the pull of gravity. Oh my goodness, so beautiful. Oh, your writing is so beautiful. I love your voice. It's just fantastic. Okay, so I've kind of given you my thoughts as I went along. I'm going to pause and think about this part right here for a second. I had some reader thoughts while I was reading it, but it was reading so well I didn't want to stop. So this is the moment she met him. I like this flashback. I like this transition into the flashback. It's kind of got a very real, I can see it playing out before me pretty perfectly. I've got the visual, I've got the sensation, I've got the setting. You've done a fantastic job as usual. It's very well done. Oh, you got such a gift. Okay. All right, that's where we're at. So obviously this was extremely unexpected, and he was apparently the server while she was out with some friends celebrating a wedding to be. So now we know how they met. All right, I'm contemplating all this. We met a server and ended up getting married and having kids together. That's a journey. That's a journey. That's a surprise for sure. Okay. In reflection, you're thinking about that later. You're like, I did not see that coming. Yeah. All right. Okay. But I do like it. I like it. I love it. I love your voice. I love your writing style. I've got this stunning visual. I mean, I feel like I was there watching this play out. Yeah. I felt like I was one of the girls sitting around the circle watching this play out. So good job, good job. All right, guys, that's going to be it for this video. I will see you guys next time for Chapter 5 of Nothing Left to Save by Noant5039.